Well, peace to you. Childhood trauma part two. Let's call it so much freedom. Now that I recalled the freezing walks, and this is part of being Irish because it must have something to do with the rough lifestyle that, our ancestors grew up in. But we also had an incredible amount of freedom. We could go out, no one knew where we were, and we didn't have to come back until the sun was going down. It was called the street lights were going on. Now, it's true, I was the oldest of 8, so my mom was pretty busy. She had maids, but they didn't, they didn't really do their job very well. They would, yes, they would cook and clean, but as far as supervision, my mom liked to take care of the babies, of course, but once we were, I would say 7, we were literally, the saying back in the day was, we were like little wild Indians. And I loved that because when I was young, we lived, as I told you, like a block away from the golf course. And we also lived maybe 2 blocks away from really land that had not been built on yet. So it was an area called Morningside in Arlington, Mass., which is the next town after Cambridge, and the town before Lexington, where we had the Revolutionary Battle, Paul Revere, and all that. So it was a great place to grow up, and it was very historical, and it was very it was called the suburbs. Beautiful, very quiet, lots of trees, and it was like a little wonderland to grow up there. So my favorite place was, I loved to walk, and I really couldn't ride a bike very well. It was a combination of no balance and poor eyesight, which I've always had. So I would prefer to walk around by myself. And my favorite place was 2 blocks up the hill, the woods. And all of this was land that was just not built on yet. And it was really woods. And when you could go inside, it was woods, it was trees. And you couldn't really easily walk in there unless you would trample upon, lots of leaves and whatever woods look like. I just loved it. I fashioned myself as an Indian, and a real Indian, not an Indian princess or something. No, I made little arrows, and I made little, you could say, well, they weren't tents because I didn't have the cloth, or I wasn't that clever. But I would get cartons, and I would get large sticks and put like a roof up over it. And I really used to feel I was an Indian. I had an incredible imagination. That was before I decided to go to the desert and be a Bedouin. But I think it was a result of too much freedom. Absolutely. I had no structure whatsoever. My parents never asked to see our homework. They barely knew what we got on our report cards. It's another Irish thing. So I'm just telling you this so everyone will be happy to learn that you can totally neglect your children's quote-unquote upbringing culturally or intellectually, or you could, and they would be just fine. Because Allah had already laid out my destiny. And I can honestly tell you, I never remember coming home from school and having my mom say, "So, honey, how was your day? Have some milk and cookies." No, it wasn't that kind of a childhood. There was no abuse. Nobody was cruel. They were just... I guess you could say otherwise occupied. I don't know. But I really liked it because that just meant I could change out of my school uniform and go and wander around. Oh, there were so many adventures. Anyway, let's get back to the Indians. I was always fascinated by Indians. I thought they were wonderful. So no surprise when I asked my mom if I could have some leather moccasins. She said, "What? What are you talking about? You have to wear your Oxfords, these ugly tie shoes we had." brown leather, and we wore them with our Catholic school uniforms. They were disgusting. And I just wanted my moccasins. And I said, Mom, just get them for me so I can wear them when I go in the woods. And she thought it was insane. She said, what do you mean moccasins? Nobody wears moccasins. That's like something you see in catalogs for costume parties or whatever. So I sulked. I think I might have even cried and said, I never asked for anything. I just want moccasins like the Indians wore. She got them, but they were baby blue. And they had the fringe and the beads, but they didn't look like Indian ones. They looked like, party princess moccasins. But that's okay. I'll never forget it. Now, here's another little vignette. No one's going to like this or understand it, except if you're my age, which is 77, and you grew up like I did. But shoes were a big deal when you wore uniforms in the Catholic school because you didn't have any other way to express yourself because you were always in this navy blue jumper with a white blouse. Suddenly came upon us the Congo boots. I forget if it was called Congo or Conga, but they were black slip-ons, just slip-ons. And they came up to your ankle, and they tied in the back. They were very unusual looking, and they had this tiny little, they called it the Cuban heel. And they just went through our sixth grade like a firestorm. Everybody had to get the Congo boots, and everybody got the Congo boots. But my mother, she was livid. She said, what are you doing wearing these shoes? You look like some kind of an immigrant. And I said, I just love them. They're beautiful. And especially then the next thing you had to do was to get the little metal taps so that you would put the taps on the front, beneath the toe area, and on the heel. And so when you walked, they would click, 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 click. We drove the nuns crazy because all of us in the sixth grade got them. It was the first concept known as a fad, and it was one of many. I'm going to do a series on my childhood traumas because this is number 2. The first one was walking in the freezing cold, and this one was too much freedom. And I just want you to realize that the Almighty Allah controls the universe and everything in it. So by the time you finish my trauma series, I think there'll probably be 6 of them. I mean, I won't go crazy on them. I have to get back to my teaching of Quran and Sunnah. But I just want you to understand that, did I have a typical American childhood? Not really typical. I grew up in what was called the Golden Ghetto. It means rich people who never watch their kids. And that's my whole neighborhood was the Irish and the Italian mafia. Yes, I didn't understand all these things when I was a kid. You didn't have to understand anything when you were a kid. It was better to not understand because then you could fantasize and make it whatever you wanted it to be. Most of it was phantasmagorical fun. No fear. We had no fear of anything. And because we were all Irish, I mean the entire neighborhood, there were 6 of us, 6 families, and we hung around together, and every single one of us were of Irish extraction. Debbie Joyce, Bonnie Brady, Sandy and Pam Murray, Diane Diggins. I mean, we were like our own little Irish mafia because we were, how would you describe it? We were renegades, little renegades, because our parents didn't know what we were doing. And it didn't make one bit of a difference because we had angels. And we were in Catholic school, so we knew about guardian angels. And every time I think about how I grew up and how the kids today, they're not even allowed to go out in the yard. They're not allowed to go out in the yard and play because somebody might come along and kidnap them. It's quite tragic. What time is it? 10 minutes. Till the next lesson. I think I'll do the next one on by the time I reached adolescence. That's when it gets really fun. Inshallah, you're enjoying this. It's just a little bit of a break because the world now is so serious and fraught with anxiety. A little levity never hurts. Assalamu alaikum.